The hall exploded into chaos. Shouts, screams, wolves lunging to their feet, guards drawing weapons, council members bellowing for order. But Lyria heard none of it. She was drowning in the silver light pouring from her scar, in the heat spreading through her veins, in the weight of 1,000 eyes and the impossible truth settling over her like a shroud. No. Draven's voice cut through the din, rough with horror. He was staring at her, his face drained of color. Not again. Not her. Elder Miriam pushed through the crowd, her milky eyes fixed on Lyria's glowing collarbone. When she reached Lyria, she grabbed her arm with surprising strength and yanked down the collar of her shirt, exposing the crescent scar fully. The mark blazed silver, pulsing in time with Lyria's heartbeat. The elder's breath caught. "Goddess preserve us," she whispered. Then louder, to the hall, "The Luna mark. A true bond mark." Pandemonium. "That's impossible." Celine shrieked, storming down from the dais. "She's human. She's nothing. It's a trick, it's dark magic, it's—" "The throne does not lie," Elder Miriam said quietly, but her voice carried. "The crown does not choose falsely. And the Luna mark cannot be faked." Celine's perfect face twisted with fury. "I am the chosen Luna. The council approved me. My bloodline." "Means nothing to the moon goddess," the elder finished. Draven had gone utterly still on the dais, his eyes locked on Lyria's. She saw 100 emotions flicker across his face: shock, recognition, grief, and something that looked terrifyingly like hope. "You knew," Celine hissed, rounding on him. "You knew she bore your mark." Draven's voice cracked. "I thought it broke. When she left, I thought." "Liar." Celine's scream echoed off the walls. "You chose me. You stood before this pack and chose me." The pack was splitting before Lyria's eyes, half the wolves pressing forward in awe, the other half backing away in fear. The council members were shouting at each other. Guards moved toward Lyria, though whether to protect her or drag her away, she couldn't tell. Lyria's scar burned hotter, the light growing brighter, and power, ancient and foreign and absolutely terrifying, rose inside her chest like a tide. "Stop," she tried to say, but her voice came out as a whisper. Elder Miriam gripped her shoulder. "Child, you need to." The shadows behind the throne moved. Not flickered. Not shifted with the candlelight. Moved. They peeled away from the wall like living things, darkness gathering and coalescing, and from within that void, a figure stepped forward into the light. Tall. Broad. Wrapped in a cloak the color of midnight. The crowd went silent. The man pushed back his hood, revealing a face that was Draven's future, the same sharp features aged by decades and cruelty, the same storm-gray eyes gone cold and calculating. He smiled, and it was the smile of a wolf who'd just cornered wounded prey. Draven's face went white. "No." The word came out strangled, broken. "Father." The former Alpha, Malek Thorn, exiled 15 years ago for treason, for attempting to bind the pack to dark magic, for crimes so terrible they were only spoken of in whispers, stood before them all and laughed. "Hello, son," Malek said softly. "Did you really think I'd miss this?" His eyes slid to Lyria, and his smile widened. "After all," he purred, "I've waited so very long for the true Luna to finally awaken." Guards rushed the dais, weapons drawn. Council members shouted over each other, their voices a cacophony of confusion and rage. Half the pack dropped into defensive crouches while the other half stood frozen, caught between loyalty to their exiled former Alpha and the son who'd replaced him. But Malek Thorn stood utterly calm in the center of the storm, his smile never wavering. "Stand down," Draven commanded, his Alpha voice cracking through the chaos like a whip. Wolves immediately stilled, though their muscles remained coiled, ready. He stepped forward, placing himself between his father and the crowd. "You were banished. The sentence was exile beyond Packlands until death. You have no rights." Malek laughed, the sound rich and warm and completely devoid of sanity. "My boy, I'm not here because of rights. I'm here because of destiny." His gaze slid past Draven to where Lyria stood trembling, the silver light still bleeding from her scar. "Tell me, son, did you really think a bond that powerful could stay hidden forever?" Lyria's heart hammered against her ribs. Her scar pulsed in time with it, sending waves of heat and cold through her body. "I don't understand," she managed. "What bond?" I'm human. I can't. Can't what? Malek moved forward with predatory grace. Guards shifted nervously but held their positions, waiting for Draven's command. Can't be chosen by the moon goddess? Can't bear the lunar mark? Can't make an ancient throne bow? He spread his hands. And yet here we are. You orchestrated this, Elder Miriam said quietly, her milky eyes fixed on Malek. The summons. Her return. You planned it all. Guilty. Malek pressed a hand to his chest in mock contrition. Though I merely accelerated the inevitable. The bond was always there, sleeping beneath her skin, waiting for the right catalyst to wake it. What bond? Lyria's voice cracked. She looked to Draven, desperate for answers, but he wouldn't meet her eyes. Draven, what is he talking about? Draven's jaw worked, muscles jumping beneath his skin. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. The accident. 3 years ago. When your car went off the road. That wasn't an accident, Malek interrupted cheerfully. That was 6 of my most loyal rogues, following very specific instructions. Attack the human girl. Draw blood. Let her suffer just enough to bring the young alpha running. He tilted his head. And you did run, didn't you, son? Ran so fast to save her. So desperate, so emotional. Just as I knew you would. Lyria's world tilted. Rogues? You said it was a crash. You said I lost control on black ice. I lied. Draven finally looked at her, and the anguish in his eyes was a living thing. You were attacked. Surrounded. They tore into your car, shattered the windows, dragged you onto the road. By the time I got there, you were dying. His voice broke. So much blood, Lyria. You were drowning in it. The memory slammed into her, not the sanitized version she'd been told, but the real one, clawing its way up from whatever dark place her mind had buried it. The snarls. The yellow eyes in the darkness. Teeth and claws and terror so absolute she'd stopped screaming. And then, warmth. Someone holding her. A voice begging her to stay. And pain bright and burning, as something hot dripped onto her torn collarbone. You bled on me, she whispered. Draven nodded, his throat working. I had no choice. You were seconds from death. I thought if I could just get some of my blood into your wounds, it might heal you enough to survive the trip to the hospital. It was instinct, desperation. I didn't know, he closed his eyes. I didn't know what it would do. A blood bond, Elder Miriam breathed. Alpha blood mixed with human blood at the moment of near death. Ancient magic. Forbidden magic. The summons didn't ask, it commanded, and Lyria Vale's hands shook as she read the words that would drag her back into the nightmare she'd spent 3 years escaping. Report to Blackridge Manor. You will serve in the Luna's wing. Not as a guest. Not as the woman who'd once shared Draven Thorn's bed and believed his promises. As a maid to the woman who'd stolen her future. The parchment crumpled in her fist, but she knew, with the cold certainty of prey recognizing a trap, that she would go anyway. The summons arrived the way all violence did in Lyria Vale's life, wrapped in silk and sealed with a lie. She found it wedged beneath her apartment door after a double shift at the motel, her fingers still reeking of bleach and broken dreams. The parchment was cream-colored, expensive, embossed with a crest she'd spent 3 years trying to forget, a silver wolf beneath a crescent moon. The Alpha's seal. Lyria should have burned it. Should have ground it beneath her heel and gone to bed. But her hands, traitorous things, broke the wax instead. Report to Blackridge Manor. Servant assignment, Luna's wing. No greeting. No explanation. Just an order, cold and absolute, signed with Draven Thorn's name in ink that still looked wet. The paper slipped from her fingers. 3 years. 3 years since she'd fled Blackridge Pack with nothing but a backpack and the taste of tears. 3 years since Alpha Draven Thorn, the man who'd whispered promises into her skin, who'd looked at her like she was the only star in his sky, had chosen another woman to wear his crown. She'd thought the heartbreak might actually kill her then. Now he wanted her back. Not as his lover. Not as his equal. As a maid to the woman who'd replaced her. You're not seriously considering this. Lyria looked up to find her roommate Elena framed in the bedroom doorway, still in her hospital scrubs, eyes sharp with concern. I don't have a choice, Lyria said quietly, though even she didn't believe it. You always have a choice. That's the whole point of leaving. Elena crossed the small living room, her voice softening. He doesn't get to summon you like some servant. He lost that right when he destroyed you. He never had that right, Lyria wanted to say. But that would be a lie. For 2 years, Draven Thorn had been her entire world. Her first kiss beneath the pack bonfire, her first love in the meadow where wildflowers grew taller than her head, her first belief that maybe possibly, a human girl raised on the edges of wolf territory could be enough for an alpha. Until the night his father and the council had stood in the great hall and declared Celine Varin, noble-born, moon-blessed, perfect, his destined Luna. Lyria had run before the coronation ended. It's not about him, Lyria said, reaching for her jacket with hands that trembled only slightly. It's about me. I need to see her crowned. I need to watch it happen so some part of my brain will finally accept it's real and let him go. Elena's expression cracked with sympathy. Then I'm coming with you. No. The word came out harder than intended. Lyria softened it. I need to do this alone. I need to prove I can stand in that room and not shatter. The drive back took 7 hours, 7 hours of her chest tightening with each familiar landmark. The broken fence post at mile marker 32. The river bridge where Draven had first kissed her, the water silver beneath a full moon. The hand-carved sign for Mama Risa's cafe where they'd stolen Sunday mornings, drinking coffee that was mostly cream and pretending the outside world didn't exist. By the time Lyria crossed into Blackridge territory, twilight had bled the sky into shades of bruised plum and dying amber. The town hadn't changed, same weathered storefronts, same pack families gathered on porches, same stairs that followed her truck down Main Street like wolves tracking wounded prey. They knew her here. Knew what she'd been to their alpha. Knew exactly how thoroughly she'd been discarded. Lyria kept her eyes forward, jaw locked, and drove toward the manor. Blackridge Manor rose from the hillside like something carved from nightmares and old power, all towering stone walls and iron-barred windows, wrapped in ancient oaks that seemed to lean in and whisper secrets. The driveway gleamed with expensive cars, sleek predators lined up for the hunt. The entire pack had turned out for this. For her replacement's coronation. Lyria parked at the far edge of the lot and sat frozen, hands welded to the steering wheel. Her reflection stared back from the rearview mirror, hollow eyes ringed in shadow, hair scraped into a knot, the faint crescent scar along her collarbone barely visible above her collar. The scar she'd gotten the night her car went off the road 3 years ago, the night everything changed. She looked exhausted. Looked beaten. Good, she thought with bitter satisfaction. Let him see exactly what choosing power over love costs. The great hall burned with candlelight and ceremony when Lyria slipped through the servants' entrance. She kept to the shadows along the back wall, a ghost among the living. No one noticed her. All eyes faced the dais where Draven Thorn stood beside a woman who looked like she'd been sculpted from ice and starlight. His Luna. Celine Varin, daughter of the most powerful bloodline in the Northern Territories. Beautiful in that devastating, untouchable way. Regal. Confident. Everything Lyria, a human girl who'd grown up in a trailer park on the wrong side of Packlands, could never be. And Draven. Draven looked exactly as she remembered, and that somehow hurt worse than if he'd changed. Tall and broad-shouldered, dark hair falling across his forehead, those storm-gray eyes that used to look at her like she held the entire world in her palm. He wore his alpha authority like a second skin now, commanding the room without effort, every inch the leader his bloodline demanded. Even from across the hall, she could feel the weight of his presence, that electric pull that had always existed between them, the invisible cord she'd spent 3 years trying to sever. An elder stepped forward, carrying an ornate crown woven from silver and bone, ancient beyond memory. The coronation was beginning. And Lyria realized, with a sharp twist of dread coiling in her gut, that she'd made a terrible mistake coming here. The ceremony began with silence. Not the peaceful kind, the suffocating kind, thick and waiting, like the moment before a storm breaks. The great hall had filled to capacity, wolves packed shoulder to shoulder in their formal blacks and silvers, the air heavy with anticipation and ancient magic that made Lyria's skin prickle. She pressed herself deeper into the shadows along the back wall, making herself small, invisible. A servant in borrowed anonymity. She'd learned the trick during her brief, humiliating tenure scrubbing floors in the Luna's wing, how to exist in a room without taking up space, how to breathe without being noticed. But even from here, hidden among the low-ranking pack members and human staff, she couldn't escape the spectacle unfolding on the dais. Celine Varens stood beside the ancient throne like she'd been born for this moment. And perhaps she had. Her gown was pure white silk that caught the candlelight and threw it back like armor, her midnight hair woven with silver thread, her posture so perfect it looked painful. She radiated triumph, not the quiet kind, but the vicious sort that needed witnesses. Her eyes swept the crowd, hungry for their worship. Draven stood 3 feet to her left, and if Celine was starlight, he was the storm that devoured it. He looked wrong. Lyria knew him well enough, had memorized every angle of his face during the 2 years they'd loved each other in secret, to see the tension carved into his shoulders, the rigid set of his jaw. His hands were clasped behind his back, but she could see the white of his knuckles even from across the hall. He looked like a man bracing for disaster. Like he knew something terrible was coming and was powerless to stop it. "Don't look at me," Lyria begged silently. "Please don't look at me." But even as she thought it, his gaze swept the crowd, searching, desperate, and for one heart-stopping second, their eyes met. The world tilted. That pull, that God's-damned electric pull that had haunted her for 3 years, slammed into her chest like a physical blow. She saw his pupils dilate, saw something flash across his face, recognition, longing, pain, before he wrenched his gaze away and fixed it on the floor. Lyria's throat closed. She pressed her palm against the cold stone wall to steady herself. "You came here to let him go," she reminded herself viciously. "So let him go." Elder Miriam stepped forward, moving with the careful precision of someone who'd performed this ritual 100 times across 100 years. She was ancient, her face a map of wrinkles, her eyes milky with cataracts but somehow still sharp as broken glass. In her gnarled hands, she carried the Luna's crown. The whole collectively held its breath. The crown was a relic from the old world, before packs had territories, before alphas ruled by councils and laws. It was woven from silver and bone, delicate as spider silk but radiating power that made the air shimmer. Legends claimed it had been forged by the moon goddess herself, that it could only rest on the head of a true Luna. Lyria had heard the stories. She'd never believed them. Until now. Celine Varen of the Northern Bloodline, Elder Miriam's voice rang through the hall, cracked but strong. "You have been chosen by Alpha Draven Thorn and approved by the Council. Do you accept the mantle of Luna? Do you swear to protect this pack, to lead with wisdom, to sacrifice yourself for the greater good?" "I do." Celine's voice dripped with satisfaction. The elder lifted the crown, raising it toward Celine's head. And the temperature in the hall plummeted. Lyria's breath misted in the suddenly frigid air. Around her, wolves shifted uneasily, confused murmurs rippling through the crowd. The candles that lined the hall flickered once, twice, then guttered violently as if struck by wind. But there was no wind. The doors were closed. The windows sealed. Yet something invisible whipped through the chamber, cold and furious and old, carrying the scent of winter and wild places. Lyria's scar, the faint crescent mark along her collarbone, suddenly burned like someone had pressed a brand against her skin. She gasped, her hand flying to her throat. On the dais, Elder Miriam froze, the crown hovering inches above Celine's head. The old woman's eyes went wide. Her hands began to tremble. "What?" Celine started. The crown moved. Not gently. Not slowly. It spasmed in the elder's grip like something alive and furious, shivering so violently that silver fragments chipped off and clattered to the floor. Elder Miriam cried out, trying to hold on, but the crown wrenched itself free with a force that sent the old woman stumbling backward. Gasps erupted throughout the hall. The crown hung suspended in mid-air for one impossible heartbeat, spinning slowly, catching the light. Then it dropped. Hit the stone floor with a sound like a bell tolling. And rolled. Away from Celine. Lyria watched frozen as the crown gained speed, rolling past the dais, past the front rows where the council members sat in stunned silence, past ranked warriors who scrambled out of its path, past wide-eyed courtiers and startled attendants who pressed themselves against the walls. It rolled with terrible purpose, like it knew exactly where it was going. Straight toward the back of the hall. Straight toward the shadows where Lyria stood. No, Lyria thought desperately. No, no, no. The crown reached her feet and stopped. The hall fell into absolute silence. Every pair of eyes in the room turned toward her, hundreds of wolves, all staring, all seeing the human girl in servant's clothes standing frozen, while the moon goddess's crown sat at her feet like an offering. Like a choice. Lyria couldn't breathe. couldn't think. Her scar burned hotter, the pain spreading through her chest like wildfire, and beneath her thin shirt, the crescent mark began to glow. Faint at first, then brighter. Silver light bleeding through the fabric. What is this? Celine's voice cut through the silence, shrill with rage. What trick? The sound that interrupted her was like nothing Lyria had ever heard. Stone grinding against stone. Ancient and terrible. The throne moved. The massive seat that had stood behind the Alpha's dais for 1,000 years, carved from a single piece of mountain granite, embedded with veins of silver, heavy enough that it would take 20 wolves to shift it, moved. It scraped across the floor with a sound that shook the walls. Wolves scattered, crying out in shock and terror as the throne rotated, its weight defying physics, defying reason. Turning away from Celine, toward Lyria. And then, with a groan that sounded almost like reverence, the ancient throne lowered itself. Bowed. To her. Not forbidden, Malek corrected. Just, forgotten. Lost to time and council manipulation. He looked at Lyria with something almost like affection. The old Pax knew. Before we became civilized, before we bowed to human laws and council politics, Alphas bonded with their chosen through blood and battle. The bond didn't care about bloodlines or nobility. It cared about truth. He gestured to her glowing scar. And the truth, dear girl, is that you became Draven's true mate the moment his blood touched yours. No. Celine's voice cut through the hall, shrill and desperate. That's impossible. I was chosen. The council approved our union. We signed contracts, negotiated alliances. You negotiated politics, Malek said dismissively. The moon goddess doesn't read contracts. Lyria couldn't breathe. 3 years. 3 years she'd spent believing Draven had simply chosen someone better, someone worthier. 3 years of thinking she hadn't been enough. You knew. The words tore from her throat. You knew about the bond and you stood in front of the entire pack and chose her? I had to. Draven's shout echoed off the stone walls. Do you think I wanted to? Do you think watching you run from me didn't destroy me? He took a step toward her, hands outstretched. The council discovered the bond. They knew what my blood had done. And they gave me a choice, reject you publicly and choose Celine, or they'd burn your entire town to the ground. Lyria reeled back as if struck. My town. 3,000 humans, Draven said hoarsely. Your mother. Your friends. Everyone you'd ever known. They'd already sent wolves to surround the perimeter. They showed me pictures, Lyria. Surveillance photos of your mother leaving for work, of your childhood home, of the school where you'd graduated. They said if I didn't comply, they'd claim a rogue attack and slaughter everyone while I watched. And you believed them? Lyria's voice cracked. I couldn't risk it. Draven's face twisted with agony. I thought, if you left, if you built a life away from me, you'd be safe. I thought the bond would fade without proximity. I thought I could protect you by letting you go. You thought wrong, Malek said pleasantly. True bonds don't fade, son. They fester. They wait. They grow stronger in darkness. He looked at Lyria. Tell me, girl, did you ever stop feeling the pull? Even hundreds of miles away, did you ever stop sensing him? She wanted to lie. But her scar pulsed with heat, calling her a liar before she could speak. The bond never broke, Elder Miriam said quietly. It only slept. And the throne, she glanced at the massive stone seat, still bowed in Lyria's direction. The throne has been waiting for its true Luna all along. This is insane. Celine shrieked. She lunged toward Lyria, her face twisted with rage. You're a human. You're nothing. I won't be humiliated by some worthless. Power exploded from the throne. A wave of pure silver energy slammed into Celine mid-stride, lifting her off her feet and hurling her backward. She crashed into the dais with a sickening crack, her perfect gown tearing, her carefully arranged hair coming loose. The hall went utterly silent. Celine pushed herself up on shaking arms, blood trickling from her split lip. She stared at Lyria with something beyond rage, fear mingled with desperate, clawing panic. Please, she whispered. Please, I've worked my entire life for this. My family, our alliance. Should have chosen a woman the goddess actually wanted, Malek finished. He turned to Draven. You see now, don't you? You can't fight destiny. You can't negotiate with fate. The moon goddess chose your Luna 3 years ago, and every moment since has been borrowed time. Draven looked between Lyria and Selene, his face a mask of torment. Father, whatever you're planning. Planning. Malek's smile widened. Dear boy, I'm not planning anything. I'm simply facilitating. He raised one hand. The temperature plummeted again. Shadows poured from the corners of the hall like smoke, thick and oily and wrong. They moved with purpose, gathering behind Malek, taking shape. Wolves emerged from the darkness. But they were wrong, twisted, their eyes glowing with sickly green light, their movements jerky and unnatural. Their pelts seemed to shimmer between flesh and shadow, caught between forms. The smell of rot and dark magic rolled off them in waves. Hybrids, Elder Miriam gasped. Goddess save us, he's been creating hybrids. Refining them, actually, Malek corrected. It took years to perfect the process. Wolf and witch magic, blood and bone, bound together with rituals the council was too squeamish to attempt. He gestured, and the hybrid wolves spread out, encircling the hall. I needed time. I needed the right catalyst. He looked at Lyria. Her. Run. Draven roared. The hybrids attacked. Chaos erupted as pack wolves shifted, their clothes tearing as they met the hybrid onslaught. Screams and snarls filled the air. Blood sprayed across ancient stone. Council members scrambled for exits. Selene crawled toward the dais, forgotten in the carnage. Draven shifted mid-stride, his massive black wolf form tearing free with a sound like thunder. He leaped for his father, but Malek merely lifted a hand. Dark magic wrapped around Draven like chains, slamming him into the wall. He yelped, struggling against the invisible bonds, his wolf form flickering as the magic fought to suppress his shift. Draven. Lyria screamed. She tried to run to him, but the throne's power flared again, not attacking but protecting. Silver light formed a dome around her, keeping the hybrid wolves at bay. They snarled and snapped at the barrier, their twisted jaws inches from her face, but they couldn't break through. Lyria pressed her hands against the light. Her scar burned white-hot, the pain blinding. But beneath the pain, something else stirred, something vast and ancient and absolutely terrifying. Power. Not hers. Or maybe it had always been hers, sleeping in her blood since the moment Draven's life force had mixed with her own. Let me in, something whispered in her mind. Not words, exactly. More like a feeling, an invitation, an offer of strength in exchange for surrender. The crown, still lying on the floor where it had rolled to her feet, began to glow. Lyria looked up to see Draven still trapped against the wall, his wolf form struggling, pain carved into every line of his body. She saw pack wolves falling to the hybrids, saw blood pooling on stone, saw Malek watching her with hungry anticipation. That's it, he whispered, though somehow she heard him through the chaos. Let it wake. Let it rise. Lyria's hands were shaking. Her entire body trembled with power and terror and a choice she didn't understand. The crown trembled. Then lifted. Slowly, impossibly, it rose from the floor. Silver light bled from its ancient bones, growing brighter, until Lyria had to squint against the radiance. It floated upward. Through the protective barrier. Through the chaos and blood and screaming. Toward her head. Lyria, don't. Draven's voice was raw, desperate. You don't know what it will do. But Lyria was tired of not knowing. Tired of being powerless. Tired of running from a destiny that had apparently been chasing her since the night she nearly died on a dark road. The crown settled onto her head with a whisper like fate exhaling. And the world exploded into silver fire. Power detonated through Lyria's body like lightning striking flesh. The crown settled onto her head, not gently, but with the finality of a verdict, of destiny claiming what had always belonged to it, and the world went white with silver fire. Energy poured through her veins, ancient and vast and absolutely overwhelming, burning away everything she thought she knew about herself. She was dimly aware of screaming, hers maybe, or the hall's collective gasp of terror and awe, but the sound felt distant, muffled beneath the roar of power singing through her blood. The protective barrier around her shattered outward in a shockwave that sent hybrid wolves flying. They slammed into walls with bone-cracking force, their twisted forms convulsing as the Luna's power rejected their corrupted magic. Silver threads spun out from where Lyria stood, spiraling through the air like living light, wrapping around columns and pillars, spreading across the floor in intricate patterns that looked almost like roots. Ancient roots, claiming territory. The throne groaned behind her, not in pain, but in recognition. In satisfaction. Finally, something whispered in her mind. Not her thoughts. Older. Deeper. Finally, you accept. Lyria tried to speak, to ask what was happening, but the power kept building, kept rising, pressure mounting in her chest until she thought she might explode from it. Her scar blazed so bright she could see it through her closed eyelids, a crescent moon burning against her collarbone like a brand. And then, without conscious thought, without decision or choice, a single word tore from her throat. Not a word, exactly. A command. Kneel. The voice that emerged wasn't entirely hers. It was layered, echoing with the weight of countless Lunas who'd worn the crown before her, their authority compressed into one undeniable imperative that slammed through the hall like a physical force. Every wolf in the room dropped. Warriors mid-shift crashed to their knees, their transformations halting mid-bone crack. Council members who'd been scrambling for exits fell forward, foreheads pressed to stone. Pack wolves locked in combat with hybrids broke apart and prostrated themselves, compelled by something older than conscious thought. Even the hybrid wolves, twisted and corrupted as they were, whimpered and lowered their malformed bodies, unable to resist the Luna's command. And Draven. Lyria's eyes found him across the hall where Malek's dark magic had released him. His massive black wolf form fought the command for perhaps 3 seconds. She saw the struggle in every tensed muscle, saw him trying to resist, before his legs buckled and he went down, his proud head bowing low. The only figure still standing was Malek. He remained upright through sheer force of will, his face twisted with fury and something that looked horribly like triumph. Dark magic writhed around him like living smoke, fighting against the Luna's authority, barely keeping him on his feet. Magnificent, he breathed, though the word came out strained. Even better than I'd hoped. Lyria stared at the scene before her, an entire pack on their knees, bowing to a human girl who'd been scrubbing floors that morning, and felt her mind fracture under the impossibility of it all. What? Her voice shook. The power was already receding, draining back into the crown, into her scar, leaving her trembling and hollow. What did I just do? You claimed your birthright, Elder Miriam said from where she knelt, her milky eyes fixed on Lyria with something close to reverence. You commanded as a true Luna commands, with the voice of the moon goddess herself. Around the hall, wolves were slowly rising, their movements cautious, uncertain. They looked at Celine, still crumpled on the dais in her torn white gown, then at Lyria, crowned and glowing with residual silver light. The shift in the room was palpable. Doubt spreading like cracks through ice. She's human, someone whispered. The throne bowed to her, another countered. The crown chose her. But the council approved Celine. The contracts. The moon goddess doesn't honor contracts. Draven shifted back to human form, uncaring of his nudity as he climbed to his feet. His eyes never left Lyria's face. The throne knew, he said hoarsely. 3 years ago when you left, the throne went cold. It wouldn't respond to me, wouldn't acknowledge Celine. I thought it was punishing me for. He swallowed hard. I didn't realize it was waiting. Of course it was waiting, Malek snapped, his dark magic finally dissipating as he released his resistance. Do you think I spent 15 years in exile researching bloodlines and ancient rituals for fun? He gestured sharply at Celine. That one was always meant to be a placeholder, noble enough to satisfy the council, weak enough to manipulate, ambitious enough to be controlled with promises of power. Celine flinched as if struck. You promised me. I promised you a crown, Malek said dismissively. I never specified which one, or how long you'd wear it. He turned back to Lyria, his expression shifting to something almost paternal. But you girl, you were the real prize. A human bonded to my son through blood magic, carrying dormant Luna power that would eventually wake. All I had to do was force the right circumstances, create the right pressure, and wait for destiny to do the rest. You used me. Lyria's hands clenched into fists. You attacked me, you manipulated Draven, you destroyed my life, all to what? Prove some theory about Luna magic. To reclaim what the council stole, Malek snarled, his calm mask cracking. They neutered the packs, turned us into politicians and diplomats, made us bow to human laws and forget our true nature. But the old magic remembers. The throne remembers. And now, with a true Luna awakened, his smile was vicious. Everything changes. A hybrid wolf suddenly convulsed, its body contorting as fresh dark magic poured into it. Then another. And another. Around the perimeter of the hole, the twisted creatures began to rise, their eyes glowing brighter, their forms growing larger. Malek was feeding them power. Guards. Draven roared. Get everyone out now. Chaos erupted again as pack wolves scrambled to evacuate the elderly and wounded. But the hybrids were faster now, enhanced beyond their previous limits. They blocked exits, herded wolves back toward the center of the hole. Draven moved toward Lyria, his expression desperate. We need to go. There's a passage behind the throne. I'm not running from him, Lyria said, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice. Lyria. I've been running for 3 years. She met his eyes, and something in her gaze made him freeze. I'm done. But even as she said it, a hybrid lunged. Draven shifted instantly, his wolf form intercepting the attack, teeth closing around the creature's throat. More hybrids converged, drawn by the scent of alpha blood. Go. Draven's mental voice slammed into her mind, the bond, she realized distantly, allowing communication. I'll hold them, just go. Elder Miriam grabbed Lyria's arm with surprising strength. Child, if he captures you, if he learns to control your power. The implication hung heavy. Lyria let herself be pulled toward the hidden passage. They fled through narrow corridors, the sounds of battle echoing behind them, until Elder Miriam shoved her into a small chamber and sealed the door with a word that made the stone glow. He can't track you here, the old woman panted. These rooms are warded against dark magic. Lyria paced like a caged animal, the crown still heavy on her head, her scar still burning. I left him. I left Draven fighting alone. The door burst open. Draven stood in the threshold, blood streaking his bare chest, his eyes wild. He must have felt her location through the bond. You can't be here, Elder Miriam started. But Draven ignored her, his focus entirely on Lyria. We need to talk. Now. The elder looked between them, then sighed. 5 minutes. Then we move you both to a safer location. She slipped out, sealing the door behind her. Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. You lied to me, Lyria said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. For 3 years, you let me think that I didn't love you. Draven's laugh was broken, bitter. Yes. I let you think the worst of me because it was the only way to keep you safe. Safe. Lyria's voice rose. I spent 3 years thinking I wasn't good enough, that I'd been nothing but a distraction, that you were everything. Draven's shout echoed off stone. You were everything, and that's why I had to let you go. Do you think I wanted to watch you leave? Do you think I survived watching you drive away with your heart in pieces? He crossed to her, his movements jerky with barely contained emotion. I died that night, Lyria. Every night since, I've died knowing you were out there hating me. I didn't hate you, she whispered. I tried. Gods, I tried. But I couldn't stop, her voice broke. I couldn't stop feeling you. Even hundreds of miles away, I'd wake up and know which direction you were, know if you were angry or sad or... I know. Draven's hand rose, hovering near her face but not quite touching. I felt you too. Every goddamn day. The bond never broke, it ached. Lyria's breath caught. Why didn't you tell me? About the blood bond, about what you'd done to save me. Because I thought if you knew, you'd come back. And if you came back, they'd kill you. His hand finally made contact, cupping her cheek with devastating gentleness. I chose your life over my happiness, Lyria. I'd make that choice 1,000 times. You didn't get to make that choice alone, she said, tears burning her eyes. It was my life. My risk. You should have. I know. His forehead pressed against hers. I know, and I'm sorry, I'm so fucking sorry. The bond between them surged. Not gently. Not sweetly. It erupted like a dam breaking, 3 years of suppressed emotion and denied connection flooding through both of them simultaneously. Lyria gasped as she felt Draven's love, vast and desperate and absolutely unshakable, slam into her consciousness. Felt his grief, his loneliness, his self-loathing for the choice he'd made. And he felt hers, the heartbreak that had nearly destroyed her, the longing she tried to bury, the stubborn, impossible love that had refused to die no matter how far she ran. The walls around them cracked. Literally. Stone fractured as the bond's power manifested physically, silver light bleeding through the fissures, the crown on Lyria's head pulsing in rhythm with both their heartbeats. "We're going to bring down the building," Lyria managed. "I don't care." Draven's voice was rough. "Let it fall. As long as I finally have you." A scream cut through the moment. Then another. The sounds of battle had changed, grown more desperate. Through the bond, Lyria felt pack wolves falling, felt their terror as Malek's magic spread like poison through Blackridge. Draven pulled back, his expression hardening. He's not just attacking the manor. He's targeting the entire pack territory. As if in answer, a wolf's anguished howl echoed through the corridors. Then another. The sounds were wrong, less wolf, more monster. "He's turning them," Elder Miriam burst back through the door, her face ashen. "Malek's magic is corrupting pack wolves, forcing transformations into hybrids. If we don't stop him." A figure appeared behind her. Celine, her once perfect gown in tatters, her face streaked with tears and ash. But her eyes glowed with that same sickly green light as the hybrid wolves. "He promised me power," she said, her voice layered with something that wasn't quite human. "He promised if I served him, I could still be Luna." "Celine," Draven started. She lunged. Draven shoved Lyria aside, taking the full force of Celine's attack. They crashed through the already cracked wall into the corridor beyond. More hybrid wolves appeared, drawn by the commotion. Elder Miriam grabbed Lyria's hand. "Run." They fled deeper into the manor's bowels, the sounds of pursuit growing closer. When they finally stopped, gasping, in what looked like an old wine cellar, Lyria saw something that made her blood freeze. The door they'd come through, heavy oak, centuries old, was marked with fresh carving. Deep gouges in the wood, still smoking slightly, forming words. "Throne or blood." Below it, in smaller letters. "Choose wisely, little Luna. War comes at dawn." Lyria stared at the message, at the promise of violence, at the choice being forced upon her. And for the first time since the crown had settled on her head, she understood what being Luna truly meant. Not power. Not glory. But sacrifice. War was coming to Blackridge. And somehow, she would have to be ready. Dawn broke over Blackridge Manor like a wound bleeding light across the sky. Lyria stood at the eastern tower window, the crown still heavy on her head, watching as Malek's army emerged from the forest. Hundreds of them, twisted hybrid wolves moving in formation with an intelligence that made her stomach turn. These weren't the mindless beasts from the coronation. These were soldiers, coordinated and deadly, their sickly green eyes glowing in the pre-dawn darkness. "Goddess," Elder Miriam breathed beside her. "He's been building this force for years." "How many pack wolves do we have?" Lyria asked, her voice steadier than she felt. 300 able fighters. Maybe another 100 who can shift but aren't trained for combat. The elder's weathered hand gripped the windowsill. Against 500 hybrids enhanced with dark magic. The math was brutal. Footsteps thundered up the tower stairs. Draven burst through the door, already dressed for battle in reinforced leather and steel, his hair still damp from washing off blood. His eyes went immediately to Lyria, and she felt the bond pulse between them, checking, confirming, needing to know she was safe. "They'll reach the outer walls in 10 minutes," he said. "I've positioned warriors at every entrance, but it won't be enough." Lyria turned from the window. Somehow, wearing the crown had changed something fundamental in how she processed information. She could feel the pack now, every wolf within miles, their locations, their fear, their readiness to fight. "He'll hit the east gate first. It's weakest. He'll use the hybrids as a battering ram while sending smaller forces to probe the north and south walls." Draven stared at her. "How do you?" "I don't know." She pressed her hand to her scar, which had been burning steadily since the message appeared. "The crown, it's like it's showing me. Strategic positions, weak points, where our wolves are strongest. She met his eyes. I can help. Not just by hiding and being protected. I can actually help. Absolutely not. Draven's voice turned to alpha command. You're staying here where it's safe. If he captures you. He won't. The crown pulsed, and power rippled through her words. Not the overwhelming force from before, but something subtler. Authority. I'm done being the helpless human who needs saving, Draven. That girl died 3 years ago. This crown chose me for a reason. For a long moment, they locked eyes, Alpha and Luna, equals in power if not in experience. Finally, Draven's shoulders dropped. You stay behind our lines, he said roughly. You coordinate and command, but you don't engage directly. Please, Lyria. I just got you back. I can't, his voice cracked. I can't lose you again. She crossed to him, rose on her toes, and pressed her forehead to his. The bond sang between them, warm and right and terrifyingly fragile. You won't, she promised. A promise she desperately hoped she could keep. The first wave hit exactly where Lyria predicted. The east gate exploded inward in a shower of splinters and stone as hybrid wolves, massive twisted things that barely resembled their original forms, crashed through. Pack warriors met them with savage fury, the air filling with snarls and screams and the wet sounds of tearing flesh. Lyria stood on the manor's second-floor balcony, Draven at her side, Elder Miriam and 2 guards flanking them. Below, chaos raged, wolves locked in brutal combat, blood painting stone, the hybrid's unnatural strength overwhelming pack warriors who trained their entire lives. Northeast corner, Lyria said suddenly. 3 hybrids breaking through. Send reinforcements. Draven barked orders into a communication crystal. Wolves diverted, intercepting the breach before it could widen. South wall, they're climbing. Archers. More orders. Arrows flew, and hybrid wolves fell shrieking from the walls. The crown burned hot against Lyria's skull, feeding her information faster than conscious thought. She could feel every pack wolf, sense their positions, their injuries, their fear. And somehow, impossibly, she could touch their minds. Hold the line, she sent to a group of warriors being pushed back. Reinforcements coming from the west. She felt their shock at hearing her voice in their heads, then their renewed determination. Alpha, she sent to a young wolf frozen in terror as a hybrid charged. You are pack. You are strong. Fight. He shifted and lunged, taking the hybrid down. Across the battlefield, Lyria felt the tide slowly, painfully, beginning to turn. Then Malek appeared. He walked through the shattered east gate like a king surveying his domain, dark magic swirling around him in visible currents. And beside him, connected by a collar of pulsing green energy. Celine. She'd been transformed. Her once perfect features were sharper now, crueler, her eyes glowing with that hybrid light. But unlike the other corrupted wolves, she retained her human form, walking upright, magic crackling around her fingertips. A battle mage hybrid, Elder Miriam gasped. He's made her into a weapon. Malek raised his hand, and the fighting stopped. Not by choice. By compulsion. His dark magic spread across the battlefield like oil over water, freezing every hybrid wolf in place. Pack wolves stumbled back, panting, confused by the sudden cessation. Malek's voice boomed across the manor grounds, magically amplified. Draven Thorn. Luna. He smiled. Let's discuss terms. We don't negotiate with traitors, Draven snarled. No. Malek's smile widened. Then watch. He snapped his fingers. Celine stepped forward, her movements jerky as if fighting invisible strings. She raised her hands, and Lyria felt something horrible reach for the bond. Dark magic, specifically designed to target the connection between Alpha and Luna. No, Lyria breathed. Celine began to chant. The words were ancient, wrong, each syllable like nails on Lyria's soul. The bond between her and Draven started to tear, not break, but rip apart slowly, agonizingly, like flesh being flayed from bone. Draven screamed. The sound was inhuman, pure agony given voice. He collapsed to his knees, hands clawing at his chest as if trying to physically hold the bond together. Lyria felt it too, felt their connection being severed strand by strand, felt Draven's presence in her mind growing distant, dying. The pain was absolute, worse than any physical injury, worse than the night he'd chosen Celine. This was losing him completely. Forever. Stop. Lyria screamed. Please stop, I'll do whatever you want. Too late for bargaining, girl. Malek's voice was almost kind. You should have chosen throne over blood. Should have surrendered your crown and walked away. Now I'll take both, your power and his life. The bond stretched thinner. Thinner. Draven's wolf tried to emerge, tried to fight, but the severing magic was too strong. He was dying. Lyria could feel it, feel his heartbeat growing erratic, feel his consciousness starting to slip away. No. The word echoed through Lyria's mind, not her voice, but something older. The crown blazed hot, almost burning, and suddenly she understood. She'd been using the Luna's power wrong. She'd been commanding wolves, coordinating battles, playing at being a general. But that wasn't what the crown was for. That wasn't what a Luna was. A Luna wasn't a commander. A Luna was a healer. A protector. The heart of the pack. Lyria stopped fighting the severing magic. Instead, she dove into it. She plunged her consciousness down into the bond, into the place where she and Draven were connected, and she held on. Not trying to stop the tearing, but wrapping herself around Draven's fading presence, sheltering him with her own life force. You don't get him, she snarled at the dark magic. He's mine. The crown's power answered her fury. Silver light exploded from Lyria's body, not the controlled, elegant magic from before, but something raw and primal and absolutely devastating. It poured through the bond, through her connection to the pack, through the very ground beneath Blackridge Manor. Every pack wolf felt it. Miles away in the town, in the forests, in territories beyond Blackridge's borders, every wolf with even a drop of Luna's blood in their ancestry felt the call. And they answered. Wolves poured from the forest. Not just Blackridge wolves, but neighboring packs, drawn by the Luna's command that transcended politics and territory. They came in waves, gray and black and brown and white, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, responding to a summons they didn't fully understand but couldn't resist. On the battlefield, the hybrid wolves convulsed. Lyria's power crashed into them like a tidal wave, and she didn't just command them, she reached into the dark magic corrupting their forms and started to unravel it. Thread by thread, she pulled Malek's influence apart, forcing the hybrids back toward their original forms. Some fought. Some resisted. But one by one, they began to break free. Impossible, Malek breathed, his confidence finally cracking. You can't, the corruption is permanent. You don't know anything about Luna magic, Lyria said, and her voice echoed with the power of every Luna who'd worn the crown before her. You studied it like a scholar. I am it. She turned her attention to Celine. The girl was still chanting, still tearing at the bond, but Lyria could see it now, the collar around her throat, pulsing with Malek's control. Celine's eyes were wide with terror beneath the hybrid glow, her lips forming words she didn't want to speak. She was a prisoner in her own body. I'm sorry, Lyria whispered, and meant it. Then she reached out with Luna magic and touched Celine's mind. Not commanding. Not forcing. Offering. I see you, Lyria sent. I see you're trapped. I see you're afraid. And I forgive you. Celine's chanting stuttered. You don't have to serve him. You never did. You're stronger than his magic. You're stronger than your ambition. You're scared. Celine's mental voice was a sob. I'm so scared. I just wanted to matter. I just wanted to be. Enough, Lyria finished. I know. I know exactly how that feels. In that moment, Lyria didn't see her rival. She saw herself 3 years ago, desperate for love, willing to twist herself into whatever shape might make her worthy, terrified of being abandoned. You are always enough, Lyria sent. Just not for him. And that's not your failure. That's his. Something in Celine broke. Not shattered, freed. With a scream that was equal parts rage and relief, Celine grabbed the collar around her throat and pulled. The dark magic fought back, burning her hands, but she didn't let go. She yanked harder, harder. The collar shattered. The severing ritual collapsed. The bond between Lyria and Draven snapped back together with such force it drove them both to their knees. But it held. Goddess, it held, stronger than before, reinforced by the Luna magic Lyria had poured into it. Draven gasped, his eyes flying open, color returning to his face. Celine collapsed, smoke rising from her burned hands, but the hybrid glow was gone from her eyes. She looked up at Malek with pure hatred. "I'm done being your puppet," she rasped. Malek's face twisted with fury. "Ungrateful." He raised his hand to strike her down. Draven was faster. He shifted mid-leap, his massive wolf form slamming into his father with enough force to crack ribs. They tumbled across blood-slicked stone, alpha fighting alpha, dark magic against raw physical power. Around them, pack wolves and freed hybrids turned on the remaining corrupted creatures. The tide of battle shifted completely. Lyria helped Celine to her feet. The girl stared at her, confusion and gratitude warring in her expression. "Why?" Celine whispered. "After everything I did." "Because you deserve a choice," Lyria said simply. "And because I'm tired of women being destroyed by men who see us as pawns." Through the bond, Lyria felt Draven fighting, felt his strength, his determination, but also his exhaustion. Malek was older, more experienced with dark magic. The fight was brutal and even. The throne. The thought slammed into Lyria with absolute certainty. The throne was calling, not just to her, but to them. Alpha and Luna together. "We need to get to the Great Hall," Lyria said. Elder Miriam nodded. "The throne is the source of pack magic. If you can reach it, then we end this." Lyria looked at Draven, sent through the bond, the throne. "It's waiting." She felt his understanding. His agreement. Together, still fighting, they began to move toward the manor. Toward the Great Hall. Toward the massive stone seat that had started this entire nightmare by recognizing a truth everyone else had tried to deny. Malek realized what they were doing too late. He tried to block their path, tried to summon more dark magic, but his hybrids were breaking free, his power was failing, and Draven's wolf was relentless. They burst through the Great Hall doors. The throne sat exactly where it had been during the coronation, but now it pulsed with light, silver veins glowing like captured starlight. The crown on Lyria's head responded, resonating in harmony. Malek lunged through the doorway behind them, bloodied but still dangerous. "You can't win," he snarled. "Even with the throne, even with your bond, I've studied this magic for decades. You're children playing with forces you don't understand." "Maybe," Lyria said. She took Draven's hand. The bond between them blazed to life, amplified by the throne, by the crown, by the blood they'd shared 3 years ago. Power spiraled up from the stone beneath their feet, ancient and pure and absolutely uncompromising. "But we don't need to understand it," Lyria continued, her voice layered with lunar authority. "We just need to trust it." She looked at Draven. Together. His smile was fierce. Always. They sat. Alpha and Luna, in perfect unity, on the throne that had waited 3 years for this moment. The throne roared. Magic detonated outward in a shockwave that shook the entire manor, that raced through Blackridge territory, that touched every wolf within 100 miles. The great hall blazed with silver light so bright it was blinding. And in that light, Lyria and Draven weren't separate anymore. They were one. One consciousness. One power. One unbreakable whole. Malek screamed as the throne's magic, pure, uncorrupted, ancient beyond reckoning, slammed into him. His dark spells unraveled. His hybrid enhancements dissolved. Every piece of forbidden magic he'd woven into his being was stripped away, leaving only the man beneath. An old man. Tired. Broken. Powerless. He fell to his knees, and for the first time in decades, Malek Thorne looked afraid. The throne's light faded slowly, gently, like dawn after an endless night. Lyria and Draven remained seated, hands still clasped, the bond between them singing with completion. Through the shattered doors, Lyria could see Blackridge territory spreading out beneath the rising sun. Wolves, pack and freed hybrids alike, stood among the ruins, staring up at the manor in awe, waiting for their Alpha and Luna to tell them what came next. Malek laughed, broken, bitter. So what now, son? You've won. The throne acknowledges you both. Will you kill me? Imprison me? Prove you're just like the council who exiled me. Draven's hand tightened around Lyria's. Through the bond, she felt him struggling, the son who remembered a father before corruption, warring with the Alpha who knew what justice demanded. Lyria? He asked quietly, out loud. "You're Luna. What's your verdict?" Every eye turned to her, and Lyria realized this was the moment that would define what kind of Luna she would be. Merciful? Ruthless? Just? She looked at Malek, at the ruin of a man who destroyed countless lives chasing power he couldn't control. "Exile," she said finally. "But not like before. No chance of return. No followers. No magic." She stood, and the crown blazed. "You'll be bound with Luna magic, a living seal that ensures you can never use or teach dark rituals again. You'll live out your days alone, powerless, watching the pack you tried to destroy thrive without you." "A fate worse than death," Malek whispered. "Yes," Lyria agreed. "Because death is easy. Living with your failures is not." Elder Miriam stepped forward, already preparing the binding ritual. Draven stood beside Lyria, and together they watched as his father was sealed, marked, and escorted away by guards who would ensure he reached the farthest borders and never returned. When the hole finally emptied, when only she and Draven remained, Lyria felt the weight of everything crash down. "We did it," she whispered. "You did it," Draven corrected, pulling her into his arms. "You saved the pack. You saved me. You—" "We," Lyria interrupted firmly. "We saved each other." Through the bond, she felt his love, vast and unwavering, and finally free to be expressed without fear or secrets. The throne hummed behind them. Content. Complete. Home. The days following Malek's exile should have brought peace. Instead, they brought uncertainty. Lyria stood in the Great Hall 3 days after the battle, watching pack members file in for what Elder Miriam called the formal recognition ceremony. The space had been cleaned, blood scrubbed from stone, shattered furniture replaced, broken windows repaired, but the scars remained. Claw marks gouged into columns. Burn marks from dark magic staining the floor. Reminders of what they'd survived. And what still remained unfinished. The crown sat heavy on Lyria's head. She tried to remove it once, that first night after the battle, exhausted and overwhelmed. But the moment her fingers touched the silver, pain had lanced through her scar so sharply she'd gasped. The crown had fused to her somehow, bound by magic she didn't yet understand. "You accepted it," Elder Miriam had explained gently. "The Luna's crown doesn't simply adorn. It becomes part of you. Until you willingly pass it to another, or until death claims you, it remains. A lifetime sentence." Draven appeared at her side, freshly showered, dressed in formal alpha blacks. Through the bond, she felt his exhaustion mirroring her own. 3 days of coordinating repairs, treating wounded, integrating freed hybrids back into pack structure. 3 days of barely sleeping, of stolen moments together that never lasted long enough. "You don't have to do this today," he said quietly. "The pack would understand if you needed more time." "No." Lyria smoothed her hands down the silver gown Elder Miriam had commissioned, Luna colors she'd been told, though Lyria still felt like an imposter wearing them. "We need this. They need to see that leadership survived. That we're stable. That I'm not going to run away again," she didn't say, but felt him hear it anyway through the bond. His hand found hers, fingers lacing together. "You're exactly where you belong." Before she could respond, the doors opened. The pack filed in, warriors still bearing bandages, families clutching children, elders moving with careful dignity. They filled the hall until bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder, all eyes fixed on the dais where the throne sat. Where it waited. Elder Miriam stepped forward, her ceremonial robes rustling. "We gather to witness what the moon goddess has already declared, the recognition of our true Luna." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Not entirely approving. Lyria could feel the divided sentiment through her new Luna senses, some wolves still uncertain about a human wearing the crown, others fiercely loyal after watching her save them, still others simply confused about what came next. "But first," Elder Miriam continued, "there is the matter of Celine Varin." The crowd parted. Celine walked forward, flanked by guards. She'd been kept in a warded chamber since the battle, not imprisoned exactly, but contained until her fate could be decided. She looked diminished without the hybrid magic, without the perfect styling, without the confidence that had once radiated from her like armor. She looked human, breakable. When she reached the dais, she dropped to her knees without being told. "Celine Varin," Elder Miriam's voice rang with formal authority. "You conspired with an exiled criminal. You participated in dark magic rituals. You willingly accepted hybrid corruption. You attempted to sever an Alpha-Luna bond. The litany of crimes hung heavy in the air. What defense do you offer? Celine's voice came out small. None. Silence. I made my choices, she continued, still staring at the floor. I was afraid of being nothing, of losing the only future I'd ever been promised, so I let myself be used. I let myself become a weapon. Her hands trembled in her lap. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. No, someone in the crowd muttered. You don't. Others murmured agreement. Draven's hand tightened around Lyria's. Through the bond, she felt him waiting. This was her decision as Luna, not his as Alpha. Whatever she chose, he would support. Lyria stepped forward. Celine flinched as Lyria approached, as if expecting violence. But Lyria simply knelt in front of her, bringing them eye to eye. Look at me, Lyria said softly. Slowly, Celine raised her head. Her eyes, no longer glowing green, just human brown, were wet with unshed tears. You're right, Lyria said. You don't deserve forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't about deserving. It's about choosing not to let someone else's mistakes poison your own future. She took a breath. You helped break the severing ritual. You turned against Malek when it mattered. That doesn't erase what you did, but it matters. So what happens to me? Celine whispered. Lyria stood. When she spoke, her voice carried Luna authority that made every wolf straighten. Celine Varin, you are stripped of all titles, all claims to Blackridge territory, and all rights to Luna consideration. You will leave this pack and never return. Gasps rippled through the crowd. But you will leave alive, unharmed, with enough resources to start over somewhere new. What you build from that second chance is up to you. Celine stared at her in shock. You're letting me go? I'm giving you what I wish someone had given me 3 years ago, Lyria said. A chance to figure out who you are when no one's expectations are crushing you. A single tear tracked down Celine's cheek. Thank you, she breathed. Then more firmly, I'm sorry. For all of it. I'm so sorry. Lyria nodded once. I know. Guards escorted Celine out, not roughly, but with finality. The door closed behind her, and Lyria felt something settle in her chest. Not quite forgiveness, but close. The beginning of letting go. Elder Miriam stepped forward again. Now, the coronation. We already did this, someone called from the crowd. The crown chose her during the last ceremony. The crown chose, Elder Miriam agreed. But the pack has not yet sworn allegiance. That is what we gather to do now. She gestured to the throne. Lyria looked at the massive stone seat, remembering how it had moved during the first coronation, how it had bowed to her when she was nothing but a servant in borrowed clothes. Her heart hammered. It's just a formality, Draven murmured beside her. The throne already accepted you. But as Lyria approached, she realized it wasn't just a formality at all. The throne began to move. Not violently this time. Gently. The massive stone seat shifted across the floor with a sound like a sigh, positioning itself directly in front of her. Then, impossibly, it lifted, rose from the ground by inches, and settled itself at the perfect height for her to sit. Adjusting itself to her. The whole fell absolutely silent. Lyria sat. The throne's magic rose around her like a living thing, warm and ancient and welcoming. It wasn't claiming her. It was recognizing her, the way it had recognized every true Luna who'd sat here across centuries. She felt their presence suddenly, ghostly impressions of women who'd worn the crown before her. Strong women. Flawed women. Human and wolf and something in between. Women who'd loved and led and sometimes failed spectacularly. But who'd never given up. The crown on her head blazed bright, and Lyria felt the full weight of what it meant to be Luna settle over her shoulders. Not power. Not glory. Responsibility. To the pack. To the future. To the truth that some things were worth fighting for. Draven stepped forward. And knelt. The sight of him, Alpha Draven Thorn, powerful and proud in hers, on his knees before her throne made Lyria's breath catch. I, Draven Thorn, Alpha of Blackridge Pack, pledge my loyalty to Lyria Vale, true Luna chosen by the moon goddess herself. His voice rang through the hall. "I swear to stand beside her, to protect her, to honor her judgment, and to build a future worthy of her sacrifice." "Draven," Lyria whispered. "You don't have to." "I want to." He looked up at her, and his smile was devastating. "You saved me. You saved all of us. Let me honor that." One by one, the pack followed. Council members knelt. Warriors knelt. Families knelt. Even the freed hybrids, uncertain of their place but moved by something they couldn't name, lowered themselves in reverence. Until every wolf in the great hall bowed before the throne. Before her. Elder Miriam's voice rang out one final time. "Lyria Vale, do you accept the mantle of Luna? Do you swear to protect this pack, to lead with wisdom, to sacrifice yourself for the greater good?" 3 days ago, Lyria would have hesitated. But 3 days ago, she'd still been running from destiny. "I do," she said clearly. The throne pulsed beneath her, a rumble of approval that shook the walls. Magic spiraled up from the stone, through her body, connecting her irrevocably to every wolf who'd sworn allegiance. She felt them, hundreds of individual presences, all bound to her now through invisible threads of Luna magic. The weight was crushing. And it was the most right thing she'd ever felt. "Rise," she said, and watched her pack stand as one. The ceremony dissolved into celebration, wolves embracing, children laughing, the tension that had gripped Blackridge for days finally releasing. Elder Miriam ushered people toward the dining hall where a feast had been prepared. But Draven lingered. When the great hall finally emptied, when only the two of them remained in the space where this had all begun, he approached the throne and took Lyria's hand. "Never a maid," he murmured, lifting her fingers to his lips. "Never forgotten. Always my Luna." Lyria's throat tightened with emotion. "I was so angry at you," she admitted. "For 3 years, I was furious that you'd chosen duty over love, politics over us." "I know. But now." She looked around the great hall, at the throne beneath her, at the crown on her head, at the pack beyond the walls who needed her. "Now I understand. Sometimes love means making the choice that destroys you so the people you love can survive." "I'd make that choice again," Draven said fiercely. 1,000 times. "As long as you lived, I could bear anything." "You don't have to anymore." Lyria pulled him closer. "We're together now. We fight together. We lead together. No more secrets. No more sacrificing each other for some imagined greater good." "Equals," Draven agreed. "Always," Lyria whispered. She kissed him there, on the throne that had bowed to her when she was nothing. The throne that had seen through all the lies and politics and manipulation to the truth beneath, that she and Draven belonged together, that their bond was real, that love wasn't weakness but the most powerful force in existence. When they finally pulled apart, Lyria rested her forehead against his. "What do we do now?" she asked. Draven smiled. "We rebuild. We heal. We show the entire wolf world what an Alpha and Luna can accomplish when they refuse to be separated." Through the windows, the sun climbed higher, painting Blackridge in shades of gold and amber. In the distance, wolves moved through the streets, repairing homes, tending wounded, beginning the slow work of recovery. Lyria's pack. Her family. Her future. She stood from the throne, Draven's hand still in hers, and together they walked toward the door. Toward the work that waited. Toward a life they'd fought so hard to claim. Behind them, the throne sat silent and satisfied. It had waited 3 years for its Luna to stop running, to accept her destiny, to claim the power that had always been hers. Now, finally, the wait was over. The throne had bowed not to bloodlines or noble birth, not to politics or manipulation. It had bowed to truth. To love. To a human girl who'd learned that being enough had nothing to do with what others expected and everything to do with what she chose to become. Lyria paused at the door, looking back one last time at the crown sitting on the stone seat. "Thank you," she whispered. The throne pulsed with warm light. "Welcome home, Luna." Then Lyria turned and walked into the sunlight, hand in hand with her Alpha, ready to face whatever came next. Together. Always.